Welcome to part two of our introductory overview of many of the arguments about the ethics of abortion. Um, in this video, we're going to be focusing on a type of argument called question-begging arguments. And as a reminder, most of this content is also freely available in book form at abortionarguments.com. It's from a open access book, Thinking Critically About Abortion. And again, our goal in all these talks is to find good arguments. And good arguments are arguments that provide good reasons or good reason for accepting their conclusions. And good arguments may and may not be persuasive arguments, but our goal is good arguments. So in the previous video, we talked about how to define abortion. And in this video, we're going to talk about a type of bad argument that's called a question-begging argument. And question-begging arguments are sometimes people are sometimes persuaded by question-begging arguments, but they shouldn't. So we're going to see why that's so. So in the previous video, we defined an abortion as the intentional killing of a fetus to end a pregnancy. And you can look at that video for how we got to that definition. But here we want to focus on what are called question-begging arguments. Question-begging arguments are a type of argument that is a bad argument. And it's a bad argument because the reason that's given in favor of the conclusion just assumes the conclusion. So you wouldn't accept the reason for the conclusion unless you already accepted the conclusion. So since the point of an argument is to give you a reason to accept the conclusion, question-begging arguments don't do this. They're a type of circular reasoning. So let me give you some examples of some question-begging arguments. Here's a conclusion. Eating meat is wrong. You ask, why think that? Somebody says, well, eating meat isn't right. Here, eating meat isn't right clearly just assumes that eating meat is wrong. So it's a type of circular reasoning. This is called a question-begging argument. The standard typical example of a question-begging argument is this. It's not an ethical argument. Here's the conclusion. God exists. Somebody says, why think that? The person says, well, God wrote the Bible, and God in the Bible, God says he exists, so therefore he exists. So these premises, or this premise that says God exists and wrote the Bible, of course, just assumes that God exists. So if you were wondering, is there a God or not, you would not accept the conclusion. I mean, you wouldn't accept the premise, and you would accept the premise like only if you already accept the conclusion. So the point is, question-begging arguments are circular reasoning. They're always bad, no matter what the topic is. All right, so here are a number of what seem to be question-begging arguments for the conclusion that abortion, that is killing fetuses to end pregnancies, is wrong. So here we have abortion's wrong because abortion is murder. Abortion is wrong because abortion is killing babies or children. Abortion is wrong because, well, adoption is a better option than abortion. Abortion's wrong because, well, I think if a woman's pregnant, she just must keep the pregnancy and give birth. Number 5, abortion's wrong because abortion should not be used as birth control. Abortion's wrong because, well, women who have abortions are just irresponsible. Abortion's wrong because, well, a good person just wouldn't have an abortion. Finally, an abortion is wrong. Abortions are wrong because, well, some women who have abortions feel guilty, and if they don't feel guilty, well, they should. So what's important to notice here is that you wouldn't accept these premises, any of these premises, unless you already believed that abortion is wrong. So each of these premises just assumes that abortion is wrong. And arguments are always bad when they assume their conclusion. So let's look through some of these quickly. And some of these are easier to see why they're question-begging. Others require a little more explanation. So first, and we talked about this first claim when we talked about how to define abortion. If somebody says abortion's murder, they're basically saying that abortion is wrongful killing. So here we have abortion, killing fetuses to end pregnancies, is wrong because, well, abortion is wrongful killing. This is circular. So this is a question-begging argument. You wouldn't think that abortion is murder, wrongful killing, unless you already thought it was wrongful killing. All right, so the next claim, abortion is killing babies and children, and so it's wrong. Well, here I think you could think about, like, what do you mean by a baby or a child? And somebody could say, well, a baby or a child is just wrong to kill, right? And I think that's a good idea. But here I think we can't just assume that abortion involves killing beings that are wrong to kill. So here we have, abortion is wrong basically because abortion is killing something or someone that's wrong to kill. This seems to just assume the conclusion, making it a question-begging argument. So that's not good. So furthermore, I think you could wonder, is it really true that embryos or early fetuses are properly described as babies or children? You could really try to define a baby or child, and maybe an embryo or an early fetus wouldn't really fit that definition. Okay, so next, abortion's wrong because, well, adoption is a better option than abortion. I think here we can see that this seems to be a question-begging argument by thinking about the idea of what you're saying if you call something a better option than something else. It seems like if you say this is better than that, you're saying there's something undesirable about that, and that's why you'd want to do this. So if you're calling adoption a better option than abortion, at the very least, you're saying abortion is an undesirable option that you'd want to avoid, and that seems close to assuming that abortion's wrong. All right, next. Abortion's wrong because pregnant women just must remain pregnant and give birth. Well, this claim, number 4 here, basically just says abortion's wrong because, well, it's wrong for women to have abortions. If they're pregnant, they must not have abortions. And that just assumes the conclusion. About number 5, all right, abortion is wrong because, well, abortion should not be used as birth control. Of course, there are good reasons why nobody would want women to frequently have abortions or anything like that. But 5 just seems to assume that, well, abortion is wrong to use to prevent a pregnancy, which seems like you're just assuming what you're trying to argue for. So why is abortion wrong? Well, because abortion should not be used to end a pregnancy or prevent birth down the road. And so that just seems to be assuming what's at issue. Next, abortion's wrong because women who have abortions are irresponsible. Here I think we can ask, well, what do you mean by irresponsible? What does it mean to be irresponsible? I think one answer is, well, if somebody's irresponsible, they're not doing what they're supposed to do, or they do what they're not supposed to do. So here, what's being said, abortion is wrong because women who have abortions are doing what they're not supposed to do, namely, have abortions. So this all just assumes that abortion is wrong. Next, abortion's wrong because a good person wouldn't have an abortion. Well, what do you mean by a good person? One answer would be, well, a good person wouldn't do something that's wrong, especially something that's really wrong, and abortion is really wrong, and so they would not do that. Well, of course, this just assumes that abortion is wrong, and it begs the question. All right, finally here, abortion's wrong because some women who have abortions feel guilty, and all should feel guilty for having abortions. Here I think the thought is, look, if you do something wrong, you should feel guilty. And women who have abortions have done something wrong, and so they should feel guilty. And that's why abortion's wrong. And this all assumes, of course, that abortion is wrong. So here are a number of common arguments that are given to think that abortion is wrong, and they all seem to beg the question or just assume that abortion is wrong. And these all seem to be bad arguments because they do that. Now, I want us to be clear that these arguments are bad arguments doesn't mean that the conclusion is false. I mean, it might be that abortion is wrong. The problem is just that these arguments don't provide good reason to show that, or good reason to believe that, because all these premises just assume that it's wrong. They beg the question, and that's always bad. All right. I can get to the next slide. Oh, darn. Here we go. There are also, of course, question-begging arguments for the conclusion that abortion is not wrong. So here's some things you might often hear. Abortion's not wrong because abortion is a personal choice. We or women should be able to choose to have abortions. Abortion's wrong because, well, women have a right to have abortions, a moral right to have abortions. Abortion's not wrong because women have the right to do whatever they want with their bodies or what they want with their bodies. Abortion's not wrong because, well, if you don't like abortions, don't have one. abortion's not wrong because, well, those who oppose abortions just want to control women. And abortion's wrong because abortion is healthcare and abortion is not up for debate. Here are some things that those last ones are some things I've heard, especially recently. So here, I think, again, these conclusions, or no, these premises just kind of assume their conclusion. Why is that? Well, think through each of them. Abortion is a personal choice. We should be able to do it. Here, I think the idea of a personal choice, if you kind of ask, like, well, what is a personal choice? What do you mean by a personal choice? Personal choices are choices that we might make that just aren't wrong. You know, if you choose to wear a blue shirt or a red shirt, it's a personal choice what color shirt you wear. We call that a personal choice because it's just not wrong. On the other hand, like, suppose somebody were to burn down a house or burn down a church. We would not call that, even though they chose to do it, we wouldn't say it's your personal choice to do that. Why is that? We don't call choices that are wrong personal choices. We call permissible choices personal choices. So I think in calling an abortion a personal choice, you're just assuming that it's the type of choice that somebody could make that wouldn't be wrong. Next, abortion's not wrong because, well, women have a right to have abortions. Sometimes when you say that somebody has a right to do something, in particular like a moral right to do something, you're just saying, well, it's not wrong for me to do it. If I got a right to do it, it's not wrong for me to do it. So here we almost have like abortion's not wrong because, well, it's not wrong for women to have abortions. And that just assumes the conclusion. Next, abortion's not wrong because women have the right to do whatever they want with their bodies. This one says what they want to do with their bodies. Here, I think you're just assuming that they are should be able to use their bodies to have abortions, which perhaps they should, or can and should, but this just assumes what's at issue. You're just assuming that abortion is not wrong, I think. Number 4, I don't know if this is really question begging or if it's just sort of like a bad slogan. Think about other things that people might say. Well, if you don't like doing that, then don't do it. You know, suppose we learn of people being murdered and we think that's wrong. And we say, man, what they did was wrong. It's horrible that these people are being murdered. Imagine somebody saying, well, if you don't like murder, just don't murder anybody. That would be absurd, which suggests that there's a problem here. I mean, consider something different. Like, you know, what if you say, like, I just don't like eating strawberries? Well, here it makes perfect sense to for somebody to say, well, if you don't like strawberries, just don't eat strawberries. So what I'm trying to say is I think we use this phrase, if you don't like it, don't do it, only about things that are permissible to do. We don't say that about, you know, if you don't like arson, just don't burn any buildings down. If you don't like murder, just don't kill anybody. So here, I think what's assumed is that abortion is the type of action that's just okay to do. It's permissible. And so it makes sense to say if you don't like doing it, don't do it. 5, abortion's not wrong because those who oppose abortions just want to control women. Well, about some things, some people should be controlled. About things that are not wrong, permissible to do, well, we shouldn't be controlled over. And here, I think what's just being assumed without argument is that abortion is the type of thing that's not wrong, and so it's wrong to control people over it. And here we're just assuming, which we're trying to argue for, which is always bad. Next, abortion's healthcare. You might think, well, healthcare is always permissible, so you're just assuming that abortion is not wrong. You can't do that. Finally, abortion's not up for debate. Here, I guess you could sort of think that things that aren't wrong are not up for debate. And I think you're just assuming that abortion isn't wrong, and so there's no legitimate debate about it. And the point is you can't just assume that. So here's some question-begging arguments to think that abortion is not wrong. And question-begging arguments are always bad on any topic. And so these are bad arguments. All right, so our next video is going to be about what I call everyday arguments. These are common arguments that you hear every day. They're not quite philosophical arguments or arguments that philosophers talk about. But tune in for our next video for that. Thank you.